On the 27th of November, 2007, a bull moose walked into a park in downtown Anchorage and started pulling at the trees. The trees had just been strung with Christmas lights. The lights tangled in his antlers. He pulled harder, and the whole string came out of the branches. He dragged them down 6th Avenue, through traffic, past shoppers carrying bags, and stopped in the courtyard of a bar. There he found a pile of crab apples that had dropped and fermented on the ground, ate them, and stood still. Knees locked, eyes glassy, Christmas lights hanging off his head. A newspaper columnist named him Buzzwinkle, and the story went everywhere, because a drunk moose in fairy lights is very funny. 4 months later, he was dead. When the biologists looked at him properly, they found out why he had been eating soft, fallen apples in the first place. His teeth were broken, worn flat, most of them missing. He was an old animal who could no longer chew a branch, standing in a city, eating the only thing left that he could still get down. We told that one as a joke for years. It was never a joke. And that is more or less how we handle this animal across the board. Long legs, dumb face, a yellow warning sign, a punchline. Almost everything we have put in that picture is wrong. This animal dives underwater to feed. Its antlers are not just weapons, they are ears. It carries a map in its head that it could not invent alone, handed down from its mother, and if we move it somewhere new, that map is gone, and its descendants need about 90 years to draw another one. It injures more people in Alaska every year than bears do. And across the lower 48 it is dying right now, in a way that is very hard to look at, for reasons that are ours. By the end of this video, that shape on the road sign is going to mean something completely different to you. If that is the kind of thing you want, subscribe right now. It takes 3 seconds, and it genuinely helps this channel grow. Let's begin. Fact 1. Start with the thing nobody believes. A moose swims out into a lake, tips forward, and disappears. Not paddling across. Down. While we are still watching the surface, it is standing on the bottom, in water over its head, eating. Fact 2. It can stay under there for close to a minute. 50 seconds is the figure most often quoted from the field, long enough to tear a mouthful of weed off a lake bed and come back up chewing, water pouring off its face. Fact 3. Its nostrils do not simply flare. They shut. Muscular flaps seal them the moment the head goes under, so the animal feeds below the surface without swallowing a drop. Fact 4. It is the only deer on the planet that can chew and swallow with its head underwater. Other deer wade in and nibble at the edges. The moose commits. Fact 5. And it is not doing this for fun. Land plants in the north are desperately poor in sodium, and every animal needs salt to run its nerves and muscles. Lake plants are loaded with it. The moose goes under because that is where the salt is. Fact 6. Getting down there is the hard part. Moose hair is hollow, which makes the animal an extremely effective float, so a diving moose is fighting its own body the whole way down. It is wearing a life jacket it cannot take off. Fact 7. A moose swims at about 6 miles an hour and can keep going for hours without touching bottom. It crosses lakes, rivers, and open saltwater channels, and in coastal Alaska it will swim island to island looking for better feeding. Fact 8. A calf can swim within days of being born. It follows its mother into the water before it can do much else, and it learns to put its head under by watching her do it first. Fact 9. Water is also a weapon. A wolf pack that would happily test a moose on land will not follow one into a lake because a moose outswims every predator in the northern forest. It can also stand in a current that would sweep a wolf away. Fact 10. And there is a quieter reason it goes in. A moose starts to overheat at temperatures we would call pleasant, somewhere around the high 50s on a summer afternoon. That black coat and that huge body were built for 40 below. Standing chest deep in a cold lake is how it survives August. Fact 11. There is even an ecological consequence. A moose eats sodium and nitrogen out of a lake and deposits them in the forest. Every summer, without meaning to, it moves fertility from the water onto the land. The animal is a nutrient pump with legs. The diving is the part people refuse to believe. The size is the part they underestimate. Fact 12. A big Alaskan bull stands over 6 feet at the shoulder and can weigh 1,500 pounds, more than most horses. It is the largest deer that has ever been measured alive, and it is walking around in your country right now. Fact 13. Its ancestor was bigger. A creature called the broad-fronted moose walked across Ice Age Eurasia, taller and heavier than anything in the deer family today. The animal on our road signs is the modern, downsized edition. Fact 14. Moose only reached North America recently, in geological terms, crossing from Siberia over the land bridge near the end of the last ice age. Every moose in Alaska, Maine, and Minnesota is descended from animals that walked in from Asia. Fact 15. It has no upper front teeth at all. Where your incisors are, a moose has a hard pad, and it strips a branch by trapping it between that pad and its bottom teeth and pulling, which is exactly the one thing Buzzwinkle could no longer do. Fact 16. Its upper lip is the tool. Long, mobile, and prehensile, it works like a short trunk, wiping the leaves off a willow stem in one pass while the head barely moves. A moose eats with its mouth the way we eat with our hands. Fact 17. Our name for it says exactly this. It comes from an Algonquian word meaning roughly, he strips off, as in stripping bark and twigs from a tree. Long before any biologist arrived, the people living alongside this animal had named it after what it does for a living. Fact 18. An adult eats 40 to 70 pounds of plants a day, which is why it browses almost constantly through the light hours. Over one winter, a single moose can work through the tops of thousands of young trees, which is the real reason timber companies care how many of them there are. Fact 19. It does not jump obstacles, it steps over them. Those absurd legs let a moose walk over a fallen trunk, or over most of the fences we build, the way you step over a curb, without ever changing pace. Fact 20. It can run at 35 miles an hour and trot for hours without stopping. The gangly walk is misleading. Watch one decide to leave and you will not see it again. Fact 21. That flap of skin swinging under its chin is called the bell. And after a century of staring at it, we still argue about what it does. The best guess is scent, a bull soaking it in his own smell and hanging it in the air where every female in the valley can read it. Nobody knows for sure, which is one of the better things you can say about a body part. Fact 22. In a hard winter, the long tip of the bell can freeze solid and break off. Old bulls in the far north often carry short, blunted ones. The animal loses a piece of itself to a cold none of us could stand outside in, and carries on. Fact 23. Its eyesight is poor. A moose will stand and stare at a person for a long moment. Not out of stupidity or menace, but because it is genuinely working out what you are. That long blank pause we read as slow-wittedness is an animal gathering information with the wrong sense. Fact 24. Hearing is where it lives instead. Its ears rotate independently, each one sweeping the forest on its own, and their surface area dwarfs ours. The world arrives at a moose as sound first, smell second, and pictures a distant third. Now the antlers, which are not what any of us were told they are. Fact 25. Only bulls grow them, and they grow a completely new pair every year of their adult lives. Each winter they are dropped in the snow, and each spring the whole structure is built again from nothing. Nothing else in the mammal world grows and discards an organ this big on an annual schedule. Fact 26. They grow at up to an inch a day. That makes antler the fastest growing bone in any mammal alive. A skyscraper going up on an animal's head over one summer. Fact 27. While growing, they are wrapped in velvet, living skin threaded with blood vessels and nerves. During those weeks, the antlers are warm to the touch, and the bull can feel them. Fact 28. A full set can span 6 feet and weigh 40 pounds or more. The animal carries the weight of a small child on its forehead through dense timber and does not get stuck. Fact 29. And here is the part that reframes everything, because we had it backwards for a century. Those broad, flat palms are not only for fighting. Two researchers mounted a real set of Alaskan antlers around an artificial ear and measured what happened to incoming sound. Fact 30. Sound aimed into the bowl of the antler palm arrived about 19% louder than sound hitting the ear head-on. The antlers work as parabolic dishes, funneling noise toward the ears. A bull moose in September is wearing a satellite receiver. Fact 31. Which explains an old observation nobody could account for. Bulls with antlers locate a calling female far more accurately than bulls without them. Everyone assumed antlers were about winning fights, and half their job was listening. Fact 32. Moose calls carry for miles through thick forest, and some of the sounds they make sit at frequencies we can barely register. Two animals a mountainside apart are having a conversation none of us can hear. Fact 33. In the fall, a bull digs a shallow pit, urinates in it, and lies down in the mud. It is not a mess, and it is not an accident. It is an advertisement, and the cows come from miles away to read it. Fact 34. Cows compete for access to those pits and splash the scent onto themselves. In moose courtship, the female is not waiting to be chosen. She is shopping. Fact 35. And she rigs the outcome. When a bull she does not want tries his luck, a cow gives a loud protest call, which carries across the valley and pulls in bigger bulls, who then drive the first one off. She does not fight. She makes a phone call. Fact 36. A rutting bull barely eats for weeks and can lose a fifth of his body weight. He burns through the reserves that were supposed to carry him to spring, then drops his antlers and walks into the cold with nothing. Every year he bets the whole winter on a few weeks in September. And now the part that changed how I think about this animal, because it is not really about the body at all. Fact 37. Moose migrate. Not all of them, but where the country demands it, they move every spring, walking and swimming to summer range, sometimes 100 miles or more, and then back again in the fall. Fact 38. The migration is not chasing warmth. It is time to a moving line of new growth as spring climbs north and uphill, the richest food of the year, available in any one place for only days. Fact 39. Biologists call following that line surfing the green wave. Arrive early and the plants are not up. Arrive late and they have gone tough and useless. The animal has to be in the right place in the right week, across hundreds of miles, every year of its life. Fact 40. So the obvious question is how a moose knows. We answered it by tracking 189 of them with GPS collars, some from herds that had held the same ground for centuries, some released into country we had cleared their species out of generations earlier. Fact 41. The result was brutal. Among moose dropped into new country, fewer than 9% migrated at all. In the old established herds, between 65 and 100% did. Fact 42. Same species, same instincts, the same green wave rolling past them every spring, in landscapes where migrating would obviously have paid. The transplanted animals simply did not know it was there. Fact 43. And then, slowly, they learned. Generation by generation, the new populations got better at tracking the wave, and as they got better, more of them migrated. Nobody taught them. The knowledge was accumulating on its own. Fact 44. Here is the number that stopped me. It took the moose roughly 90 years in a new landscape before they were properly migrating again. Not 90 days. 90 years passed down mother to calf, one animal at a time. Fact 45. Which means migration in this animal is not instinct at all. It is inherited information, taught and rebuilt across generations. It is, in the plainest sense of a word we usually keep for ourselves, culture. Fact 46. And culture can be erased in an afternoon. When we wipe out a moose population, we have not only killed the animals, we have deleted a century of knowledge about that specific valley, and no surviving moose anywhere can give it back. We can put new moose in, we cannot put the information back. That is the fact I cannot get out of my head. We have spent 100 years arguing about whether animals think, and this one has been quietly running a library the whole time, and losing it every time we clear a landscape. Fact 47. A calf stays with its mother for a full year, and that year is the school. It learns the routes, the crossings, the willow stands, the safe places to give birth, and which lake bottom is worth holding your breath for. Everything it will ever know about home it gets in 12 months. Fact 48. Moose remember mineral licks and specific feeding sites for years and go back to them deliberately, sometimes crossing many miles of forest to reach one spot they have not seen since they were young. They are not wandering, they are running errands. Fact 49. They update too. Moose that had lived for generations without wolves showed almost no fear of them at first. Once wolves returned and a few mothers lost calves, the survivors changed their behavior permanently, and the wariness spread through the population inside a generation. Fact 50. Some cows work out something more calculating still. Where bears take a lot of calves, mothers move closer to our roads and our buildings to give birth, because the bears will not follow them there. She is using us as a shield, and she worked that out herself. Fact 51. Moose are also, unusually for deer, mostly solitary. No herd, no lookout, no shared alarm call, no safety in numbers. Every decision this animal makes in the woods, it makes alone. Fact 52. Which makes the memory matter even more. A herd animal can copy the crowd and be right most of the time. A moose has only what it learned from one female, years ago, and whatever it has figured out since. There is nobody to check with. Fact 53. And there is one relationship in this animal's life that is absolute, and that overrides everything else it knows. A cow moose with a calf will take on a bear, a wolf pack, a truck, or you. Fact 54. Which produces a statistic almost none of us expect. In Alaska, more people are injured every year by moose than by bears. Not a joke, not a technicality. The state wildlife department states it plainly on its own website. Fact 55. Moose do not bite. They rear up and come down with their front hooves, then keep stomping. Half a ton of animal delivering that, repeatedly, is not survivable the way people assume. In 1995, a moose killed a 71-year-old man on a university campus in Anchorage, after students had spent the morning throwing snowballs at it. Fact 56. Almost every serious incident has the same shape. Somebody walks between a cow and a calf without seeing the calf. If you ever spot a young moose on its own, the correct assumption is that you are already standing in the wrong place. Fact 57. Dogs make it far worse, because to a moose a dog is a small wolf. Many attacks on people are really attacks on the animal at the end of the leash. The moose is not being unreasonable. It is applying the rule that has kept its species alive for 1,000,000 years. Fact 58. A newborn calf weighs about 30 pounds and can outrun a human being within 5 days. Its mother stands over it that entire time, and she does not sleep much. Fact 59. It then grows at an astonishing rate, putting on 2 to 3 pounds a day through the summer, one of the fastest growth curves of any mammal on Earth. By its first November, a calf that started smaller than a Labrador outweighs a grown man. Fact 60. And then comes the hardest moment in a moose's life. Just before her next calf is born, the mother turns on the yearling she has taught for a year and drives it away. It does not understand. It keeps trying to come back. Fact 61. Those evicted yearlings, alone for the first time and with no idea where anything is, are the moose that end up on highways, in yards, and in the middle of towns. One walked through the doors of an emergency room in Anchorage. Almost every moose you have ever seen on the news was a teenager who had just lost its mother. Fact 62. Around 1,500 moose move into Anchorage every winter. They come down out of the mountains when the snow gets deep, and they stay in the city for months, in parks, in yards, on bike paths, standing in traffic. It is probably the largest wild animal any American city lives with year-round. Fact 63, which is how Buzzwinkle came to be a local celebrity in the first place. He had been darted and tagged years earlier after getting his antlers caught in a rope swing in somebody's yard, and after that the biologist knew him on sight. Fact 64, people would call the state office just to report where he was. When his back leg went bad, the biologist started asking callers how the moose was walking, using the whole city as a monitoring network for one animal. Fact 65. In April 2008, he was found lying behind a print shop, and he was put down there. He was around 13, which is old for a moose. He had been living inside a city of 300,000 people, and quite a few of them knew his name. Now here is a piece of this animal's story that almost nobody in America has heard. Fact 66. In 1869, a Russian zoologist wrote to the Tsar's government with a proposal. Europe has its horses and its cattle, he argued, but the North has a giant of its own, and nobody has ever seriously tried to work with it. Fact 67. Nothing happened for 60 years. Then, in the 1930s, the Soviet Union took the idea seriously and took it somewhere very strange indeed. It started building moose cavalry. Fact 68. The experiments are exactly as odd as they sound. Pistols, spikes, and shields were fitted to moose antlers. Animals were trained to haul artillery. The plan was a unit that could cross deep snow and swamp where horses and vehicles could not. Fact 69. It never reached the field. The Winter War came, then the Second World War, and by the time either was finished, the whole concept of cavalry was finished with it. The moose army quietly ceased to exist. Fact 70. So after the war, the project turned agricultural. If this animal could not carry a soldier, perhaps it could fill a milk pail. And in 1949, a serious domestication program began at a reserve in the far north. Fact 71. The findings came fast and they were consistent. Moose can be milked as easily as cows. Moose cannot be kept in stalls. Penned up, they sicken and fail, partly because they need wild plants nobody can supply in bulk. Fact 72. They are also impossibly fussy. A moose will refuse a branch thicker than about a pencil. Feeding one in captivity means matching, by hand, a diet the animal has been assembling for itself out of an entire forest. Fact 73. And the meat idea collapsed for a reason that says something about this species. Moose could not be led to slaughter. They would not go. Forcing them was dangerous, and the economics fell apart in our hands. Fact 74. So the plan inverted. Instead of confining the moose, they let it go. A farm opened in the Kostroma region in 1963 with 2 calves, run on that principle. And it is still the only moose farm of its kind on Earth. Fact 75. The method depends entirely on the first hours of life. A calf born on the farm is taken from its mother within 2 or 3 hours and raised by people from a bottle. Fact 76. That timing is everything. The calf imprints on humans, and the mother imprints on the women who milk her and starts treating them as substitute young. She stands to be milked because, as far as she is concerned, she is feeding her own family. Fact 77. Then they open the gate. She walks into the forest, roams free across tens of thousands of acres, and comes back to them every morning through the summer to be milked, sometimes strolling past the visitor parking lot to get there. Fact 78. Get the timing wrong and it never works. If a cow gives birth out in the forest instead of at the farm, she does not come back. Not that season, not ever. One missed morning and the animal is simply wild again. Fact 79. Nobody can hold them, so they track them. Every adult wears a GPS collar, and the herd is checked daily on a map because the alternative is having no idea at all. They still lose 1 or 2 milk cows a year, mostly to poachers. Fact 80. And the whole free-range arrangement has a wonderfully awkward side effect. Farm cows regularly mate with wild bulls out in the forest, so the breeding program is permanently being edited by strangers. Fact 81. One of those cows was named Lucy. She lived 20 years and 4 months, which is remarkable for a moose, and on her best days she gave 6 quarts of milk. For 2 decades she walked out of a forest nobody could fence, on her own, every morning of every summer, because she felt like it. Fact 82. In more than 60 years of trying, the total number of moose that have ever lived on that farm is a few hundred, and the working herd today is closer to a dozen. There is the lesson in one number. We have not domesticated this animal. We have negotiated with it, one individual at a time. Which brings us to the way most Americans actually meet a moose, which is at speed, through a windshield. Fact 83. Alaska holds somewhere between 175,000 and 200,000 moose. Maine has roughly 60 to 70,000, the largest herd in the lower 48. The animal is the official state animal of Maine, the state land mammal of Alaska, and it turns up on more town seals and license plates than most of us have ever counted. Fact 84. Around 800 moose are struck by vehicles in Alaska every year. In deep snow they walk on plowed roads and railway lines because it is easier, and in winter they come to the shoulder for the salt we spread on the asphalt. Fact 85. Think about what that means. We laid down a trail of exactly the mineral this animal crosses lakes and holds its breath to find, and then we drove along it at 70 miles an hour. Fact 86. A moose collision is not like hitting a deer. The legs go out from under it, and half a ton of body comes through the windshield at head height. A Canadian study found that roughly a third of people in moose collisions had injuries rated severe or fatal. Fact 87. Sweden hit this problem so often that the car industry ended up with a test named after the animal. Drivers swerve hard around an imaginary obstacle and swerve straight back to see whether the vehicle stays upright. Fact 88. In October 1997, a Swedish journalist put a brand new Mercedes through it and rolled the car onto its roof. A Trabant, the cheap and much mocked East German runabout, had passed the same test without drama. Fact 89. The fallout was enormous. Mercedes halted sales, recalled the cars, retrofitted thousands of them, fitted electronic stability control as standard, and then rolled that system out across its entire range. Most of us are driving cars made safer by a Swedish moose that was not even there. Fact 90. And the advice, counterintuitively, is not to swerve. A moose almost always keeps walking, so braking hard and passing behind it usually beats steering into the space where it is about to be. The animal is not going to stop for you, and it is not going to turn back. Fact 91. Newfoundland is the clearest case of what we do to this animal and to ourselves. Moose are not native there at all. 4 of them, 2 bulls and 2 cows, were taken off a train and released on the island in 1904. Fact 92. From those 4, with no wolves and endless food, the population reached roughly 150,000. It is now the densest moose population in North America. Cars hit hundreds of them a year, and in one national park, the moose have eaten 60 square miles of forest down to open meadow. Fact 93. Nobody involved was malicious. 4 animals were moved a few hundred miles to make life easier for loggers and miners, and a century later an island is a different place, and people are dying on its roads. And now the part that is genuinely hard to sit with, because it is happening right now, in your states. Fact 94. In New England, the moose is being killed by a tick. Most ticks move from host to host. This one latches on in the fall and stays on the same animal all winter, through 3 life stages, never letting go. Fact 95. Not a few ticks. Researchers who collared calves in New Hampshire and Maine counted an average of 47,000 on a single animal, and more than 96,000 on one of them. Read that again. 96,000 on one calf all winter. Fact 96. The animal rubs itself raw trying to get relief, wearing away its own coat until it turns pale and ghostly. Biologists call them ghost moose. The calves die of straightforward anemia, and in the worst years, between 70 and 86% of them are gone by spring. Fact 97. The reason is winter arriving late. Every extra warm week in the fall is another week for the ticks to find a host, and unlike white-tailed deer, moose never evolved the grooming behavior to pick them off. New Hampshire's moose population has roughly halved. Fact 98. There is a second killer, and it also traces back to us. A brainworm carried harmlessly by white-tailed deer is fatal to moose, attacking the nervous system until the animal loses control of its own body. As mild winters push deer further north, they carry it straight into moose country. Fact 99. Minnesota shows you the shape of it. The northwestern herd went from around 4,000 animals to fewer than 100, and it has never come back. The northeastern herd fell from roughly 8,800 to about half of that, where it sits today. And that is the good news story. Fact 100. So here is the gap, stated plainly. This is an animal that needs about 90 years to relearn how to find spring in a new landscape, and it learns it the only way it can, from one mother at a time. We are now changing that landscape faster than that, in every direction at once, and we are asking it to work the whole thing out inside a single lifetime. We started with Buzzwinkle, standing in a bar courtyard in Anchorage with Christmas lights in his antlers, while everybody laughed at the drunk moose. Now you know what you were actually looking at. An animal that dives to the bottom of lakes and eats down there. That hears through the shape of its own antlers. That remembers a mineral lick it has not visited in years and walks to it on purpose. That carries a map drawn by its mother, out of information gathered over lifetimes, which we can delete but cannot replace. An animal that could not be penned, could not be herded, could not be driven to slaughter, and would not eat a branch that failed to meet its standards. And an old one at the end of his life, in the wrong place, eating the only food he could still chew. So here is my question, and I would really like an answer. Which animal where you live has the worst reputation compared to what it actually is? And now that you know what is going on behind that long, slow face, will you ever look at a moose the same way again? Tell me in the comments, I read every one of them. If you made it to the end, subscribe, because it means you would rather know what is actually out there than keep the cartoon version. Leave a like if the moose surprised you, and drop the name of the animal you want me to take apart next. I will see you in the next one.